Oh my gosh, you guys. I have so many thoughts and feelings about Fate the Winx Saga, so this is your warning now that this episode does contain spoilers. If you would like an overview without spoilers, check out the link in the description below. I have linked a Twitter thread by the Blue Mix on Twitter. They do a really good job of just giving an overview without giving away spoilers, really. So, on with the show. Hey there, welcome to the Winx Forever Podcast. I'm Lola, creator, host, and lifelong Winx fan. I'm taking a deep dive into the very cool universe of Winx Club. So whether you've been a Winx fan since 2004 like myself, or you vaguely remember the show from your childhood, or you're being introduced to it for the first time, welcome. This is the Winx Forever Podcast. Wow. First off, I would just like to say thank you so much for all the lovely comments and feedback that I've received for the first few episodes of the podcast last week. Your feedback truly means so much, and the fact that you'd even take the time to listen and help me produce better content with your feedback, you guys are just awesome. So if you have any feedback at all, or you just want to hit me up, please DM me on Instagram or on Twitter, and I'd love to know what you guys want to hear from Winx Forever Podcast. So now it is time that we look at the highly anticipated live action reimagination of Winx in Fate the Winx Saga. I intentionally waited to make this episode to give people time to watch it for themselves, so I hope you're ready for this, because here we go. The plot. 5 girls meet at a school for fairies to learn about their magic and how to use them. Wow, does that sound familiar? So the series is definitely a modern reimagination of the cartoon. It's not an adaptation like I had said a lot in the first few episodes of the podcast. The plot honestly lends a lot more from its original source material, probably more than we all thought it would, namely being its main plot of Bloom's journey to discover more about her origin and her powers. So obviously, there's a lot of liberties that the writers and the showrunner, Brian Young, took while creating Fate, like the POC-coded characters omitting main characters entirely, and overall the geography of the magical realm, and many others that we'll get into. But first, let's take a look at the Winx girls of Fate the Winx Saga. Bloom's background differs a lot from the original series. For instance, Winx Club Season 1, Bloom's Earth parents adopted her after Mike finds her in a fire. In Fate, however, she was switched with Mike and Vanessa's human baby. However, the core of who Bloom is hasn't really changed all that much. She is still very much a spunky teenager that will pretty much stop at nothing to get the answers about her origins and her powers and where she's from. Bloom and Aisha are roommates in Fate, as opposed to the original series where Flora is Bloom's roommate. However, Flora is absent from the first season and is not a part of the Winx Suite, the dormitory where all the girls live in. Yeah, that's how they're able to call this the Winx Saga, is because all 5 girls live in the Winx Suite, which is the dormitory at Althea College for fairies where they live. The name Winx of their suite has not been formally addressed yet in the series by anybody. They just kind of rolled with it and was like, yeah, we live in the Winx Suite. It's the Winx Suite. We're the Winx Suite mates, like, weird. That would be one of the first things. Like, what the heck does that word mean? Why is this dorm called the Winx Suite? So we'll see if that gets addressed in season 2. Another aspect that differs in Fate from the original Winx series is that Stella isn't the one who finds Bloom on Earth, like in the original series. Farah Dowling, Fate's headmistress of Althea, finds Bloom just a few months after she nearly killed her parents in a house fire that she accidentally started in a magical fit of rage. Classic. So naturally, Bloom's Earth parents don't even know that she's a fairy until the very last episode, which, don't get me started on the emotional montage. I cried many tears. We don't get a ton of Aisha's backstory in the first season of Fate. She's still a fairy of water, though it doesn't seem like she is royalty anymore, like in the original Winx series. Instead, they decided to play off of Aisha's overachieving jock academic characteristics in the show. In Fate, she's very hard on herself to perform well in class and in her friendships, which really leads her to always want to help Bloom, even when Bloom doesn't really seem to welcome it. I'm really hoping for more character development for Aisha's character in season 2, because as it is, her character is tending to err on the side of the token black helper character for the main white protagonist, and we just simply can't let them reduce her Queen Water Fairy to that. There is a scene at the very end of episode 2 where Bloom and Aisha have this really cute, roommate moment together. They bond over the fact that neither of them really had, friends before coming to Althea, and that this is really new for both of them, which explains why Aisha can be overbearing at times and why Bloom is really quick to push her away. And honestly, it's a really sweet moment, and I didn't understand it really until I rewatched it for the second or third time. But I really appreciated that moment. Fate Musa is probably the one with the most liberties taken in her character's development. She's no longer the fairy of music. In fact, there are only 6 types of fairies that exist in this new reimagined Winx world. Musa is now a mind fairy, and so her specialty is being able to feel other people's emotions, even when she'd probably rather not. She copes with this by listening to music. My favorite way that Musa's power is described was by Farah Dowling in episode 3, where she refers to Musa as an exposed microphone on a windy peak. And I just thought that was, accurate, but also very cute. And of course, probably the largest liberty taken with Fate Musa is that Winx Musa was originally Asian coded, whereas the directors casted an actress who is of Asian descent. Now, I'm not going to say whether or not anyone is Asian enough to play a traditionally Asian coded character, because that's not my place at all. However, I do believe the harsh criticism that the creators of Fate have faced due to some of their decisions are well deserved, especially when it comes to POC coded characters. Representation is so important, especially when it comes to the entertainment industry. I personally would love to hear from Eugenio Straffi and Brian Young themselves to comment on these decisions that were made in Fate, and not let the poor actresses have to deal with these questions from fans, from press conferences, and their questions on Instagram lives. So Eugenio, Brian, your move, dudes. Another liberty taken in Fate was in Winx Club. Musa's roommate was the fairy of technology, Techna. However, in Fate, she is roomed together with new character Earth Fairy Terra, who we find out in the first episode is in fact the cousin to our Winx fairy of nature, Flora. Leading up to the premiere of Fate, the fandom also met this change in main characters with harsh criticism about removing yet another traditionally POC-coded character from the main girls. We'll have to see what they do in season 2 to introduce Flora, but if she isn't Latina-coded, we riot. Again, Straffi, Young, your move. Terra, however, is actually one of my favorite characters in the first season of Fate. She's so bubbly and caring and honest, and really the only one with a good head on her shoulders throughout the first few episodes, in my opinion. So she and her brother Sam, who is also an Earth Fairy, they grew up around Althea with their botanical and, I assume, potions professor, Harvey. Tara does mention that her mother's name is Rose, which is traditionally known as Flora's younger sister in the Winx series. Though after that one mention in episode 1, Tara literally never mentions her mother again in the rest of the episodes. So I'm hoping that this is a good character development moment for Tara, because really we don't see a ton of it other than she knows a ton of second years because she grew up around Althea. And yeah, that's basically all we know, is that she grew up around Althea. Stella in Fate is your basic, stuck-up, preppy princess of Celeria. As a longtime Stella fan, it was just disappointing at first to see that this is the angle they decided to take on Stell. It just seemed cheap at first. But after learning more about the character's background and also her relationship with her dictating mother, Queen Luna, it made a lot more sense. But also that's the thing. Most of the changes we see aren't made for just no reason at all. It helps support the story that they are reimagining, and as a creative and writer, I can't really discredit them for that. But a lot of people are saying that they hated how terrible they were all to each other in the first 3 episodes. But then they became less terrible in episodes 4 through 6. And that's what we call character development. Now remember, Brian Young and the writers of Fate only had 6 episodes for season 1. That's not a lot of time to build a show and steady character development that we see in the original series throughout season 1. Because there were 20 more episodes to work with. So of course they had to come in hot and heavy and establish these character flaws so that we can see the redemptive qualities throughout the first season in just, 6 episodes. Personally, I believe that Fate did an incredible job with the amount of time that they had to work with. There's always going to be more that they could have said or done, sure, but personally, I'm looking forward to what they'll be able to accomplish if they get approved for more seasons, and hopefully even more episodes than just 6 episodes a season. That would be awesome. So the specialists. In the original Winx series, the specialists come from a completely different all-boys school. Obviously, that has been changed, and we have some gender equality roles, which are really cool that we see in Fate, because now both schools are co-ed. Girls can be specialists, sick, but also boys can be fairies, which is also great. Gender equality, let's go. Only specialists that we really get to learn anything about in Fate are Sky, Ribbon, and new character, Dane, which I get it, 6 episodes. There's not a lot of time to introduce all 5 of the main specialists, but just Sky is no longer a prince in Fate, the Winx Saga, as he was in the Winx original series. But he is the son of assumedly deceased war hero. We would come to find out that Sky's dad isn't really dead. Ooh, intrigue. Like Silva, headmaster of the specialists and also best friend to Andreas and now father figure to Sky, led us to believe in the first 3 or 4 episodes. And then, oh my gosh, we also find out that he killed him? Pick a lane. There's a lot happening there, and it's a situation, it's a whole situation. Also, differing from the original Winx series, Stella and Sky of Heraklion had previously dated in the Fate series. What? As we all know, if you're new here, this is for you. In the original Winx series, Stella dated Prince Sky's best friend Brandon, who we have yet to see in the series, though I'm not really holding my breath. Ribbon is the quote-unquote proper delinquent we deserve. Now, there are scenes that I will admit, they go way out of their way to make him overtly edgy, to further press that this is not a kid's show by any means. Though the fact that the franchise has gone from season 8 to now Fate is very jarring and confusing, and going back to the whole inconsistency thing. Yeah, there's a lot of that. So Riven befriends a first-year specialist named Dane, who he, in true Riven fashion, bullies for not being a cis male, and even gets really ridiculed by the series' main villain, Beatrix, for gay bashing, quote unquote. Dane never truly comes out to Riven in the series, which I believe is a stronger stance the writers could have made for this character, with the little development they had given him. Not allowing Riven to put him in a box or stereotype him was pretty cool. I will say, I don't think that this quite should do it for the LGBTQ representation in the show, but I suppose we'll have to see what happens with this character in Fate Season 2. Honestly, Fate Riven isn't any smarter than Winx Riven. He still gets dragged around by the main female villain the whole season and really falls for her. And we all know how the story goes, Riven. We know that you'll likely get your heart broken and come crawling back to the light side at some point in later seasons. It's only a matter of time. Also, differing from the original series, and probably the biggest in Riven's character, is that Riven and Musa are no longer love interests. Thank God. Their relationship was toxic at best and just straight up emotionally abusive at worst. So I'm glad that it's no longer a thing. However, they did get the two characters a tiny little scene together where Riven makes a sexual innuendo to Musa and she was disgusted by his presence. Simply perfect. Let's talk about the Althea faculty for a minute. In a school of like 200 plus students, maybe, probably more, we see 3 faculty members. Silva, Harvey, and of course, Miss Farah Dowling. I kid you not, it is so hard for me to not call her Farragonda. Like, you have no idea how many times I've almost called her Farragonda, because I just call her Farah. And then just stop myself at saying Farragonda. Like, because it's so innate to me. So innate. Anyway, as previously mentioned, Harvey is Tara and Sam's father, though Mother is still nowhere in sight, and they all live at Althea. Harvey seems to be a replacement for, like, Professor Palladium in the original Winx series, who was originally the Potionology professor. Silva is the headmaster of the specialist school, which is on the grounds of Althea. Silva is also an attempted murderer, apparently, which I don't know if that's any better than us believing that he was just straight up a murderer. Man, honestly, poor Sky. This poor little confused guy. He's like, so pitiful. I was pretty disappointed we didn't get to see any more faculty for the schools than we did. Again, understanding that the time restraints the writers had, I get that. But come on. There has to be more than 3 freaking professors, and a headmistress should not be teaching first year's classes. Man, I'm really just hoping that they figure out this whole Roslyn deal really soon in the second season so that we can get back to, like, more of the seeing them in class, seeing what they're learning, what they're doing to perfect their powers, and just meet more professors. Hopefully it's not just those 3. Gosh. And to wonder why just 3 randos out of nowhere could overthrow your school and completely, change over the faculty. No duh. There's 3 of you. There's 3 of you. There's 3. I can't with this. It needed a lot more world building. That is what a lot of season 1 was missing. Besides, like main POC characters, 20 more episodes needed. Tell us the history of the other world, the lore of it all. Is the other world a part of Earth? Is it an alternate dimension? Is it a parallel universe? What does mortal technology play into this? Why does Aisha know about Harry Potter? There's a lot of questions. But overall aesthetic of the show, honestly, is really well done in my opinion. It's not this super dark teen drama that all the critics wanted us to believe it was at first. For me, Headmistress Dowling's office and the Winx Suite were the highlights of the series sets. They really took time and attention to detail in these spaces, probably knowing that these were the most sacred to the fandom, and really brought them to life. From Aisha and Bloom's dorm room, the common area, to Musa and Tara's room and Stella's single bedroom, it was really magical to see them piece together some elements from the show to create this living area the girls and Fate share. Like, for instance, Musa's wall beside her bed is covered in, EDM posters and concert tickets, and she even has a guitar in the corner of her loft area beside her desk. While Aisha's walls are graced with, raindrop-shaped mirrors and achievements such as medals because she's a jock, scattered throughout her things. Bloom seems to still be an artist. She is said by Vanessa to enjoy, thrifting, and she has drawings. Not that you have to enjoy thrifting to be an artist. But she has drawings up in her earth bedroom, as well as in her dorm around her bed. Even down to, the octagonal shelves in their bedroom. It's a very unique space in the original series, so I feel like they really did it justice in Fate. And then, Dowling's office is nothing short of a powerful headmistress of a magic college office. I love the windows with the stained glass and the secret passageways and, the magical objects in the office. I gasped when the ships started moving and the waves started moving on the globe in her office in the first episode. It's so good. I love it. We're halfway there, guys. You need a break? I need a break. Let's have a break. Hey guys, Editing Lola here. I hope you're enjoying the episode. In the next half of the episode, we will be going over the girls' powers, which I just realized I completely glossed over Bloom's power, which might be good because I can go into more depth in it when we go through the series, in the episodes. I also failed to mention any of my thoughts on Beatrix, which I have many. Stay tuned to hear those in the next episode. You're listening to She Makes Magic by Big Wild. Be sure to follow him, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. As I previously mentioned, and unlike the original series, each fairy in the other world is either a water, fire, air, mind, light, or earth fairy, despite the fact that we're supposed to believe that they're on a different planet, supposedly, and they're still called earth fairies instead of nature fairies, but I digress. There's been some criticism about them making the fairies having seemingly generic powers, and many equating their powers to that of the witch fairies from the hit Disney original series. However, what they ended up doing with the powers and how they are able to expand upon their abilities within each power, it's actually pretty cool. Water fairies have control, as Farah mentions in the second episode, over the lakes and the oceans of the world and the molecules and living organisms around them. So, also, plays into that ice and vapor and steam. So think Avatar The Last Airbender waterbenders, but Winx Club. Earth, Farah says, is sand or rock or soil or any matter of plant life. Again, very much like earthbenders, I guess. So could we see more minerals or metal bending? It's been done before, yes, but it's cool to see it play out in the reimagining of this Winx world. So new to the Winx realm are mind fairies. Obviously, there were different characters in the original series that had the abilities to create illusions and to mess with your mind, like Darcy and even Myrta. Mind fairies have connections to people's thoughts and memories and dreams. They have the ability to make people feel or even think what they want them to feel or believe. This power specifically reminded me of Winx season 1, episode 13, when Bloom goes back home and discovers that she can, like, see people's auras. You know? Like, don't mess with mind fairies. Air fairies, as we see in the lead villain, Beatrix, control apparently speed, temperature, sound, power, and electrical properties. And this is why I believe that Techno can still realistically make an appearance in the series at some point, because electrical properties, technology, I mean, that goes hand in hand. So let's go. Light, which Luna describes as when you control light, you can control what people see. I mean, Stella straight up made herself invisible, yo. Like, that's incredible. And they've done such a good job of giving Stella's power so much more depth. And it's so great. And I really appreciate, like, what they did with this. And excited to see what they'll continue to do with it. I mean, overall, I'm really impressed with what they're going to do with their powers. Farrah alluded in the second episode to the fact that as they grow their powers, they can also learn to channel other elements, becoming, I guess, an avatar, I assume. But it'll be really cool to see how these fairies grow and use their powers individually, and then also learn to harness others. Like, maybe Bloom does end up being able to see people's auras and harness, mind fairy powers. I mean, that would be dope. Okay, forget what everyone said in the reviews leading up to Fate. The fashion wasn't terrible. It was actually pretty dang good, and so many looks were served. I'll be sharing some of my favorites from the show next week on, like, my social media. But just to highlight a few, let's go down the list. Bloom. Her whole aesthetic, honestly, is most of my wardrobe. I love her jackets. I love her half up, half down hairdos. She's just... The costume designers did a great job with this character. Stella, yes, queen. Her preppy aesthetic was, predictable, but also so just. I love her pink dress with the little star brooches when her mom comes to visit. Like, so royalty, so cute, so chic. And can we just take a minute and address the fact that the Ring of Celeria was perfect in every way. I loved it. I loved it. Believe it or not, Musa's looks were actually a vibe. Her red bomber jacket was everything on brand for a live action Musa, and I'm here for it. Tara's outfits were surprisingly also my aesthetic. I have a strong mix of, like, Bloom and Tara aesthetics, I'm finding out. But, like, Aisha's look in episode 5 in Dowling's office, like, reception area slayed me. Like, the high-waisted pant and the colored sport tee, I live for it. However, the character that absolutely never stopped serving us looks in Fate was none other than the freaking headmistress herself. Yo, Farrah freaking Dowling, her hair, her overcoats, her dresses, her skirts, her pendant necklaces, I am living. I've never wanted to dress like a headmistress of a fairy school so badly. Rosalind could never. The way Netflix rolls, they didn't skimp on special effects budget. For a show about magical fairies, I'm so glad they didn't. I know that, like, a lot of fans were up in arms about them not being in glittery, cutesy fairy outfits like the original series, but, I mean, even as good as the visual effects are, they couldn't have done it justice. And honestly, I'm really happy with the transformation sequence that we did get and how they approached the lore of fairies evolving away from transformation magic long ago. Like, it was all really well done and it was tasteful, and I'm happy with how they presented their powers with the effects. So, like, overall, just generally, broad general statement, Fate, the Winx Saga, does preserve the heart of Winx Club, in my opinion, which is friendship, love, girl power, and, of course, magic. However, season 1 did leave us with some questions. Is Farrah really dead? Will we see Flora in season 2? Will we see Tecna in season 2? Why the crap are powerful fairies in the other world using mere mortal iPhones and freaking Instagram to communicate throughout the entire season? Does Mark Zuckerberg and Tim Cook's power really have that much reach to be able to also connect beings in the other world? Like, I'm not buying it. That is something that I really, really missed in the Fate series that was originally in the Winx series, that marriage of fantasy and sci-fi. The original series does this so well, seamlessly. They are in a magical universe. Of course they would have advanced technologies and hovering cars and hover bikes and laser swords, and Bloom's mortal phone, even being the latest model, wouldn't even work in the other world. It's just pitiful, and Tecna would never allow it. Whew. Y'all, that was just an overview. I'm going to be breaking down the Fate episodes over the next several weeks, so I really hope you'll join me. And to those that are still kind of like on the fence about this show, I do think that you should give it a try. Like, at least give it a good like watch through. And if you don't like it still, like, that's fine, and you're completely entitled to your own opinion on that, and I respect you for that. I believe that we can have healthy, productive, constructive conversations about likes and dislikes and disagreements and where the series falls short, and still all be, a cohesive fandom. So that's my thoughts on it. Take them or leave them. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode of the Winx Forever podcast, consider following our social media linked in the show notes below. The Winx Forever podcast theme is the song She Makes Magic by Big Wild.